I want to ask you a question. Who's coaching you? Who's asking you the tough questions? Who's telling you, man, you're the common denominator to all of your issues and challenges? Who's telling you, man, all day long you become the magnetic pulse that attracts to you both good and bad? I want to be your life coach. I want to be the one that cheers you on to the finish line. I want to be the one that you ask the tough questions. And it doesn't mean that I have all the answers, but that means that you have a partner, someone who believes in you, not the you see right now, but the you can't imagine, the you that you are to become, the you were destined to be. I always say we both need the positive and the negative. It's not enough to have the knowledge of the matter, but we must have the wisdom as well. For wisdom settles it. And that's what I want to offer you as you join me on the Coach's Corner. I want to offer you the wisdom of the matter. Maybe it might be relationships, talking about our campaigns for more, for life, the dark room of our subconscious, our spiritual journey. Whatever it is, I want to be there to encourage you, to build you, to challenge you, to cheer you on to the finish line. I'm qualified to do this. Why? Because I'm you.
Well, thank you for joining us for another edition of the Coach's Corner. My name is Marcus Sillett. Surely as I approach the microphone, I have my own personal and professional issues, but I think that I bring to the table the wisdoms from the scars that I have incurred from the journey of this life. Along the pathway, I've picked up a few lessons, and I just try to share them with you right here and right now. I would be remiss if I continued on without first saying thank you so much for your listenership worldwide. Italy coming up strong, Australians coming up strong. Thank you so much for those that are listening to us. I mean, just some people listening to on the far sides of the world, okay? Not many, but I mean, when they ping in, we can tell. And so thank you so much. For my American listeners, thank you again for your listenership on the various platforms where we broadcast or air. And for those that are listening to us on the 415-96radio.com, www.415-96radio.com, thank you. And those that are following us on Twitter and Facebook, liking our fan pages, and also sharing with us their thoughts, we give you much praise for staying in touch. Well, today's thought, you got to have a release valve for your thoughts and your emotions. If not, you're going to blow up. Let's talk about it. Are you ready? Let's go. Thank you, Mr. DJ. And today, we just briefly want to talk about the release valve. Do you have one? First, let me say, to make you feel better than you normally would, try to do this all the time. I am guilty. I think we all are. I am guilty of having thoughts and emotions that are bottled up and packed down. Bottled up and packed down thoughts. Now, for an example, my son, he and I were talking about an issue or two at school. And knowing him, he would go to his room and he would think for 2 to 3 hours. I think I was the same way about the issue, which wasn't really major, but because of his makeup, he would give it more thought than needed. And what I was trying to explain to him is that what you need to do is give your thoughts a voice. Give your thoughts a voice. That's even for good or bad situations. It doesn't matter. And, I have some thoughts that I need to give voice. And I mean, for the Christian is told to cast down imaginations and every high thought that comes against the knowledge of God. But that scripture is also simulated in life principles that you have to, you can't let, I admit, you can't let your thoughts lie dormant, be packed down, and never tell them. Even fantasy thoughts. I want to stop and say that. Even fantasy thoughts. You have to say, when you have a thought of a fantasy or something that you know that you know is way out there, or that you know is wrong, or that you know would put your whole life in jeopardy. You have to eventually give it voice and tell it no or yes. Because if you don't, your most dominant thought is your next reality. I'm just keeping it real with myself and keeping it real with you. And you know me, I don't play around with it. I'm just telling you the truth. And so even with fantasies or thought processes that, as I was telling you about my son, he will go up in his room and he will begin to think about the thing, and he'll just regurgitate how unfair it might have been, or how that he should have, would have, could have, whatever the case may be. And I said, well, you need to learn how to let go. And part of letting go is having a release valve, because what happens, particularly in his case, is that those thoughts build up. Those thoughts build up. And the emotions from the thought processes build up also. And there's no regiment to release the emotion. DJ, give me some music. There's no release valve person. I meant to say regiment. There's no regiment to release. There's no regiment to release the pressure. Thoughts and emotions build pressure. And we got to be careful. We have to empty ourselves. In other words, we have to answer thoughts and emotions. And so back to my son, I said, well, what you got to do is you got to let go. And part of letting go is that you got to say to yourself, I'm going to let this go. I mean, just that simple, you know. Or this is a lesson that I have learned. You know, because he's got this thing where I don't want to make any mistakes and I don't want to mess up. And I keep trying to tell him, you're going to make mistakes. That's not the problem. The problem is, are you going to learn from them? But then, you know, in his earlier years, I didn't know until he told me that he was just laying in bed thinking about how not to make a mistake, how it's just like impossible, right? Especially in middle school. But the point of the matter is, he never gave his thoughts voice. Or for instance, something might have happened, and sometimes when you talk to your children, you find out more things than you intended, because they end up telling you about 3 or 4 stories that connected to the story that you're investigating. And then you look around and say, okay, now I did not know that all of that was going on. You know. But the point of the matter is that they have all of these thoughts and emotions pinned up because they're not necessarily skilled in releasing these things. And so what I was also sharing with my son is that, listen, even with your emotions, if you feel, you know, guys get mad. I mean, you know, that's the thing that guys do. I don't know why people are so shocked about that. Well, you know, young boys get angry. And we see that even more so when their father is absent from the scene. Not because it's anything personal against that particular man, but also because the makeup of the boy child is achievement based. I've shared this before. And so when that achievement cycle has been interrupted by something that seems to be foolish to the child or insignificant to the child, then anger arises, you know. But anger can also be the greatest resolve for men. Anger can be the greatest resolve for men. And I think that's what God intended when he made a man. Because surely we're not as smart as the women who can go from one side of their brain to the other, who can multitask, who can have babies and put up with 9 months of burdens and then, you know, 11 hours of labor. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, I have to give kudos to all the women out there who may be listening, man. You guys are the bomb, okay? But you know, I try to share with my son the wisdoms of life, but sometimes I just have to shut up, you know, let him talk, and I find these things out. And you know, he's probably just like me, because that's the way I used to do. I used to go in my room, but I used to turn around and I would read a book. So every time I get mad, if I was on punishment for a long period of time, I would just read, because we weren't allowed to hang in the street, so that wasn't an option. You know, but you see a lot of kids that are just, you know, they have pent up emotions because they haven't been taught to release. They have not been taught that pressure builds up emotionally, pressure builds up socially or intellectually, cognitively, pressure builds up. because you're wondering about things, you're thinking about things, you have fantasies, you have desires, and good and bad and ugly, pretty, bad, good, and ugly, all of it. But whatever it is, it has to have a release valve, or it will become your next reality. I mean, with my son, I share with him, if you don't release these things, what will happen is that when something goes awry, what will really come to light is an massive explosive situation. And people will say, well, what in the world, what happened? And all of the pent up emotions from all the other instances and all of the thoughts from all the other nights will come out in a punch that is so powerful that it knocks somebody into next week, okay? Because there was no release valve. All right, so that's what we have to do. And the Christian has been given particularly a way to do it, but we don't practice it, to be honest with you. But we can start. It's not too late. Well, we can say, I bring my thoughts into captivity. Part of that is a spiritual warfare type situation, but the other part is principle centered. You do have to bring your thoughts into captivity in order to file out what's good and what's bad, and be able to bring in some new data. Yeah, you got to bring in some new data on your stuff. Take a small break. Be right back. I remember watching a Tony Robbins motivational video, and I must admit to you, I do not read or watch on a normal basis out of 30 years, maybe 20 years of doing some kind of speaking, whether radio, writing, whatever. I have not really watched any motivational speakers. What happened was, when I was a child and I had long punishments, I did a lot of reading of motivational. I don't want to say they were motivational. They were more like psychosocial / motivational people. And I spent a lot of time studying and reading those types of books as a child. So maybe that makes up for why I don't read as much now. But I was watching a Tony Robbins video, and I was watching how he was showing the audience about the choice to be depressed. Being depressed is also a choice. Now, this is not to offend anybody who may be on medication and have a therapeutic subscription to, face their depression in a medical way. But it was just interesting that he really broke it down to the thought and the emotions. And this is why I say the release valve for thoughts and emotions must be you must be aware of it. You must be aware of it. And we're still, you could be in your 30s and your 20s and 30s and 40s, and you're still not aware of how to release things. Not release it bad. I'm just saying how to release, how to let it go, so it does not have a build-up effect on the next situation or the next hypothetical incident. And so it pays to pay attention to yourself. And I have found that men, as they grow more toward their 40s and 50s, they have battles that they don't hear a lot of people talking about. But part of those battles are, centered around thought and emotional buildup. Whether they have families, whether they have jobs, they're changing environments with their jobs, changing environments with their kids as they grow from children to adolescents and so forth and so on. And so men have a lot of pent up thoughts and emotions that they rarely talk about. And then when you look around and you see that a man is caught up in the thicket of some kind of scandal, some kind of sex situation, some kind of money situation. And I think what happened I think partially what happens is that behavioral issues that shock folks are partially due to pinned up thoughts and emotions that never were released. There was nobody to talk to. People are so judgmental. Church is so rigid and so orthodox. And so I must keep up this facade, and I must make sure that I pretend, and I must make sure I look the part, sound the part, walk the part. And I never could ever share that I had a fantasy about having 2 wives. I'm just using that for an example. Right, I seen your eyes when you went, okay, to the left there. I mean, but the fact of the matter is, and he doesn't have to voice it if it's not been a major thought pattern in his life, but I'm just saying that, if that's something that you think about all the time, you got to get some communication going so that you can release that, because if not, our most dominant thought becomes our next reality, and then folks want to know, well, why? Because we wrestle with these things. We wrestle with our thoughts. This is part of the not only spiritual warfare, but cognitive, intellectual, whatever you want to call it, emotional warfare, to bring things to light. And sometimes when you look back on your life, you're like, I don't understand how I felt so X, Y, and Z back then. I was listening to a song by Kirk Franklin that says, "The storm is over now." And all of a sudden, when I heard the song, I had a completely different meaning of that song. I mean, I had a completely different meaning. And the meaning was, when I heard the storm is over now, I thought about the seasons of our lives. Because remember when I was talking about relationships, just to divert for a second, when I was talking about relationships and when they go awry and when we hook up with folks out of a mindset that we find out later we've outgrown, and the person is still hanging around and not benefiting us in our future. And I said, well, usually those relationships take 3 to 5 years. And if it's a marriage, it takes a good decade out of your life. Well, guess what? That's a whole lot of thoughts and emotions right there. You got like a bank full of thoughts and emotions. And it just seems to be like a freaking wash machine sometimes, swirling around and whirling around. Then you have a breast and it comes swirling around in whatever flavors you can imagine. And then all of a sudden you grow. You realize that you are the common denominator to every situation. And if it's to be, it's up to me. And you begin to change you. And you begin to analyze and assess you. And you stop pointing the finger. And you stop whining every time it hurts. And on and on and on and on. And all of a sudden, when you hear the song, "It's Over Now," it's like, wow. And that's what I said when I heard the song. I said, wow. I mean, it was the rainiest season for the tears that would fall. It was the angriest season, violently angry in the sense that I can't believe you did this. I can't believe you said that about me. I can't understand why, That entire emotional, intellectual, spiritual storm, I thought was, when I first heard the song, was just talking about a little trial here and there. Man, let me tell you, that's a freaking season of thoughts and emotions from having went the wrong path or hooked up with the wrong person. Take a small break. Be right back. Okay, so it's over now, man. I mean, when I heard that song just here recently, I was like, wow, man. I looked back over my life. I said, what a storm, man. That's one for the record books, bruh. For real. So if you're going through a storm right now, It's going to be a minute before it's over, but if you just hold on, man, I mean, no more tears, man. I tear up just thinking about no more tears because, man, let me tell you something. The storms in our personal and professional lives, they can be drastic. They can be drastic. Maybe you're in a storm right now and you got a lot of pent up emotions. I mean, you don't even know. I mean, and I'm with you. You don't even know how to express it. You know, he left, she cheated. You know, she left, he cheated. You know, your parents broke up or your significant one died. You know, your kids are gone. You feel all alone. You know, it could be any number of things. I was just listening to the news about 5 people who died in a house fire. 5. Mother and 4 kids, and she had 3 other kids that survived. So I'm thinking they're gonna need help for the next 2 decades. They're gonna need, that's all I was sitting there, I was thinking they're gonna need help for the next 2 decades. For the next decade, for the next 10 years, you have your mother die in a house fire with 4 kids. That's a decade worth of work right there. They're gonna need some support, not for this week, this month. They don't need a song and a praise. They don't just need a prayer. They gonna need help, therapeutically, cognitive, and however you want to shape it, say it. They're gonna need support for the next decade. You see what I'm saying? So my eyes got wide. Because their storm is just beginning. It's not over now. I mean, you can listen to that song and cry and get a little bit of comfort. But the fact of the matter is their storm just started. And so, you know, you can pray for that family. 5 people died. And the fault was not that of the resident. The landlord failed to repair some electrical some bad wiring. The house had very bad wiring. Just wow. So I want to encourage myself and encourage you that as we go through life, when we can, if we can make ourselves more conscious of the fact, that's what prayer is for too, by the way. Because not necessarily just telling God these things, but taking a moment and taking a spiritual moment and saying, for the Christian now, Father, I have had these thoughts that are not in line with the discipleship principle life, and I want to bring these thoughts under the auspices of the authority of the Word of God, for instance. And I want to declare today that I am the righteousness of Christ, and you know, and so forth and so on. You know, but you know, you want to be careful, because a thought is not a deed, but it can become one. Because as a man thinketh, so is he. I've been guilty. We want to be careful with our thoughts and our emotions. I've had many outbursts during my storms. Swore what I was going to do and what I wasn't going to do. When I look back on it, it's funny. It really is. It's just funny how we're more blessed than we give ourselves credit for. We have more of a dream than the dream that we're chasing, but yet we still trying to keep up with a Jones or a Smith somewhere. So I just want to encourage you to release. Yeah, release. You know, the art of letting go is war within itself. It's learning how to take a situation, instance and incidents and put them on the shelf. Because surely my arms are too short to box in all the rings of life. And I can't erase what people bring in the form of misery and strife. If you take a look at your life, You'd have a lot more peace in letting go. But a lot of us just don't know how. How do you forgive a foe? How do you turn your back on the pain? It's a lot to swallow. Life can be hollow, and if you're thinking about something that you shouldn't, it's okay. Just make sure you tell the same thought corridor, we can't go there. We can't do this anymore. And then how you feel, up today, down tomorrow, good today, bad tomorrow. It's always up and down. Sometimes you feel like a clown. Sometimes you look like one emotionally because you have all of this seemingly camouflage of feelings. And you're trying your best to wing it. Hard on the outside. Cool. Collected. But you don't feel protected. Your emotions are running wild. So you let go in a drink, a dance, a booty call, a chance at love. But it doesn't help. It's not enough. Why do we try to erase our pain with more pain and then call it gain? I'm just saying, at best, we could be honest. But that's painful too. And we hold honesty in. But if we're going to hurt anyhow, we might as well tell the truth. The truth is there's a leak, there's a crack in this old building. And my soul has got to move. I trust that the danger zone is not part of what you got to deal with. Whatever you do, you got to keep yourself connected. You got to find somebody you can trust that you can talk to. There's only so much drinking you can do, only so much drugs you can do, only so much booty you can tap. Keeping it real, keeping it real. Before you realize that you got to try something more balanced. Truth of the matter, man. So you're in my thoughts because you may be walking into your storm. Somebody else may be just walking out. You might be crying. Somebody else ready for a shout. Whatever happens, release the valve. Release the pressure. Slow, slow, slow. Whatever happens, release it slow. Please. You release that pressure too fast, you're going to blow a kneecap. You release that pressure too fast, you're going to get somebody pregnant. I need some help right there. You release that pressure too fast, you're going to have an overdose. You release that pressure too fast, and you're going to have an extramarital affair. You release that pressure too fast, you might give up on church and then call yourself giving up on God. Release the pressure slow. Keep talking, keep praying, keep writing, keep listening. Mr. Coach. Whatever happens, follow us on Twitter if you can. We appreciate you and thank you for your listenership. You're the best. Take care of yourself. See you next time.